Let's make sure all of our panelists are pinned to the top of the screen here before we get started. Okay, I think we should be good. Awesome. So my first question for any panelist who wants to take it is, why should students be interested in the tech industry right now?
I think I'm the only one off mute, so I can go.
Okay.
Many reasons, but I think one of the biggest is that the tech industry is really fueling growth across the global economy, and that's definitely been seen more in the last decade, and is here to stay. And lots of job opportunities when we look at the growth of the tech industry over the past few years, and a lot of really interesting, cool opportunities going forward. There's a big AI boom right now. And so it could go into many things, but essentially what I would say is, if you want to help like fuel the global economy and fuel some really cool products across the market, tech industry is a good place to do that.
Yeah, I would totally echo that thought. This, unlike some industries which are shrinking, tech is definitely here to stay and is going to grow. And so if not now, future, you would definitely be able to still find a role in tech. And it's a good way to stay relevant. I often feel that I would become this old woman who's just like, our mothers can't understand technology if I wasn't working in it day in, day out. Also, I'm not someone who really likes dressing up. So for any females out there who honestly, tech is super casual. You don't have to dress up. Like when I see people in finance or in law firms, and you have to kind of dress the part at least a little bit. And tech is super casual. It's great. And maybe the economy's not quite the same as it used to be. And I'm not encouraging this all, but some startups have beer on tap, and it's great.
Yeah, I could add in some more flexible hours. Definitely one of the perks of working in tech. Most of the team work remotely, especially after COVID. A lot of that is promoted and, part of the normal job as we speak. And then perks such as, flexible hours, but also really good pay. There's also opportunity to learn while you're developing in certain roles. Yeah, lots of benefits.
Yeah, and this isn't the only industry where you can have this opportunity, but tech is definitely one of the places where you get to work with a lot of incredibly talented and smart people. So if that's something you enjoy, this is the place to be.
Cool. That's really cool. I guess what we'd also like to know is how did your guys' career develop to where it is now? And maybe also some important experiences that you guys have encountered along the way.
Go, Wendy. It looks like you're about to talk.
I could go next. I was sure if who's gonna go next. So yeah, in terms of how I started as my career in Microsoft is actually when I first started intern when Microsoft Big Park specifically was a game studio. And I've been previously interning through various other tech company as well, like EA, HSBC, Software House, smaller business startups that are tech focused. And ever since after graduating, then I joined Microsoft full time and have been working, I guess, in the same studio for more than 12 years. That was a shocking number that I heard today. I didn't even remember that was 12 years. Yeah, so gradually I developed from an individual contributor, which is the regular software developer, to the engineering manager, now managing a couple more junior developers.
Yeah, I can say I definitely didn't follow a more traditional path. Uh, I think there are courses for product management now, but that didn't really quite exist when I was entering the product management field. So it's not like you can go to school for, so you can go to school for software engineering. You kind of can't really go to school for product management. Maybe that's a thing now in some curriculum. But yeah, so I actually got a degree in marketing, and I would say it kind of fell on me by chance. So I had role in marketing. I entered a startup doing as a business analyst, which was kind of like a project assistant role. But I had always wanted to do product. And so the CEO had actually approached me and offered this opportunity for me when they were opening up a software development product management department for their as a companion app to their wearable. So I would say the most, it kind of fell on me unexpectedly, but I would say it's like, don't always, you kind of can't expect what opportunities may come for you, and like be open to those opportunities, I would say is kind of how I would say, take it. So I didn't set my path in a specific way, and it's never too late to kind of change your path. I actually was in finance for a little bit before I was in product management as well too, but spreadsheets are really dull. So
It's a good line to finish on, Lisa. Yeah, I guess going back to university, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Studying both computer science and business. Definitely enjoying the computer science courses a little more. So I did some work experience on kind of both fields and took an affinity to engineering and developing. And then had an opportunity to do a startup. Did that for many years. And then I actually interned for Microsoft while I was still a student. And then as startup was kind of disbanding, reached out to my old intern manager, got a referral that way, and then joined Microsoft full time. Been here 4 years. Started as a IC, individual contributor, as Wendy mentioned, and then got a little bit of exposure to the management role, managing interns, Joel being one of them. And then eventually became an engineering manager when the opportunity arose, knowing that I kind of wanted to pursue that path after getting a bit of exposure to it.
That's super cool. And also I think as Joel mentioned, Greg, you performed a role as a co-founder at CoachBot. How did that tie into, I guess, your path?
Yeah, that was post-university, pre-Microsoft, about 4 years. Actually co-founded with a couple other Microsoft interns, and also like developed a lot of skills during founding CoachBot, during the startup, that helped me interview and get a position at Microsoft, and kind of led naturally to the engineering management role as well. But super good experience. I think out of university is a good opportunity to take a bit of risk. We saw some good success and then some burnout, lots of challenges. Startups aren't easy, but definitely a good experience, and quite contrasting to a mega company like Microsoft.
Hey, Joel, I think you're muted right now.
I figured. Okay, so my next question, we'll start with you, Wendy. I know both you and Greg followed the path of going from a software engineer to becoming a manager. What parts of that path did you find difficult, and what skills did you need for that?
Right. Yeah. I'm still learning as we go. Yeah, it's only been, I guess, 2 years that I've started as an engineering manager journey. So I think a lot of like the mind shift is towards like, helping others and then managing your team, your reports, you're managing that you're not like the blocking roadmap that, to achieve certain, project or goals. Because usually the time as an individual contributor, as a software engineer, you're more concentrated on your specific tasks. But I think looking at an like a manager position, then you're looking at how to spread the load as well as unblock people. So that would be one skill set that, as I am developing and as we speak, and learning as I go. And then also to add is, I think as an individual contributor for a software engineer, you're more focused on the problem at hand, whereas like as an engineering manager, you have to maybe talk to partners, work with product manager, work with design, a lot of the cross-team collaborations.
Totally. What do you think, Greg?
Yeah, would definitely echo a lot of what Wendy said. I think the biggest shift is from being an individual contributor to a manager is similar to what Wendy said about like as an individual contributor, an engineer, you're focusing on solving the technical problem at hand and coming up with a solution. And that's a very specific kind of problem solving set of skills. And then as you become manager, your problem solving becomes a bit more in not HR department, but the human capital kind of area, managing your team.
People skill.
Yeah. Optimizing your team for who should work on what to get your project the best success. And then, yeah, working cross discipline. It's a very different kind of skill set to problem solve, but it's a new challenge, and that's what makes it exciting as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I forgot to mention this during the introduction, but I've worked at the Microsoft Big Park for 2 summers, and I had the great luck of having Wendy as my manager for one of those summers and Greg for the other. So I can vouch they're both doing excellent jobs as managers. I'll turn the question to Lisa now. What skills and attitudes have helped you be successful in product management?
Yeah, I actually want to touch on the last question, which I didn't mention. I actually started my career in a startup because I think Greg also mentioned. I think the benefit of being in a startup is that you can kind of get your hands dirty in a lot of different areas, and you learn a lot of different arenas that you wouldn't normally expect. So I also managed to fall into the role, and you can change what you work on much easily, and you get a lot more exposed. So really rapidly too. So I launched 3 apps during the time, and I was at one startup. So things happen at a different speed. As for attitudes and skills to excel in the role, I think there's definitely there's cross-team collaboration. So while there's typically we typically work with I would work with Wendy and Greg closely about all this cross-team collaboration, sort of at a high level. Is our feature feasible? What sort of the effort level it looks like? So a lot of those people skills, relationship building is required. So you need to maintain your good relationships with your designers, with your engineering managers, with the engineers you work with. And most importantly, or equally importantly, is actually your stakeholder management. So these people are part of your stakeholders, but the other side is actually your manager or your leadership team, so that you can convince them that the feature that you've sold them on is going to deliver the value or what you promised, whether that's business. So it's usually some sort of business value because it will solve some problem for customers, or it will bring in a certain revenue number, or it solves some unmet need. Any one of those things could be good levers. So I would say another thing I would think is having an analytical mindset, I think is very important for a product manager. We're often, in order to convince people, you need data. So oftentimes we're working with a data team, or at a startup, you might be pulling your own data. You might be doing your own research to pull some sort of data out of that and analyzing that and making some sort of projection with the finance team to sell your case. And what else? There's I mentioned the relationship building. I think flexibility is also another big one. Things can change quite dynamically in software management. So you need to be prepared that what you're offering may get punted because of resource constraints. And you need to be okay with that, or you need to be ready to fight for that if you think it is the right thing to do. And you fight for that by providing more data. What else? There is also, I think having an open mind to listen is also very important. because I only own one aspect, like understanding, trying to draw the customer value and the business value and what that kind of crossover is. But there are other subject matter experts in design, in data, in engineering, and you need to be able to heed their reasoning, listen to their reasoning, understand whether something is difficult or not, and work collaboratively really well together so that you can deliver an approach that everybody agrees with that will be the best bet for the company.
So I'm starting to see a little bit of a pattern with startups. Are startups a good way to kickstart like careers? And do you guys recommend joining one as we step into the job market?
Personally, I think startups are a wonderful place to learn. I spent several years in startups and then at a bigger size company before I joined Microsoft. And I think you get so much more exposure. And like I said, the cycles are much quicker. You would think that a larger company has more processes done, but I think it really varies from company to company. So I would recommend it. I would say in the current job market, you may want to ensure that if you're looking at a startup that you have ways to validate that they're well funded though. Just right now, the economy is maybe not great for startups, but if financial stability was not an issue in the current moment for you, I totally strongly recommend it. And in other years, it's honestly, I totally recommend it. It's a great place to be. You get to have so much more cohesiveness with your team members, and you get to make larger decisions on a product typically. Like I would say larger decisions, the impact you deliver is much smaller though, in depending on how you look at it. You can deliver more impact because you're making a larger product decision, or in my instance at least. But the people you touch are much fewer. So Microsoft, you're obviously touching millions, if not billions of users. And at a startup, it may be 10, it may be hundreds, thousands. So different type of scale.
Yeah, I also worked at a startup for many years, and I had a great experience and would definitely recommend it. But I think like as you enter the career, as you enter the job market and start to look at your careers, I think like include it as an option. Don't disregard it because it's not necessarily one of the big tech companies or one of the major companies. Weigh all your options, look at all your possibilities. I had some offers to a couple big tech firms, and I chose to go start route out of university because it was a time in my life where I wanted to take that risk and experience it, knowing that these large tech companies would probably still be around if things went sideways, and well, they were. So can definitely consider it, but consider startups, small companies, medium companies, large companies. They all offer their different benefits and can be right for each individual.
I didn't specifically go into a startup, but there are stories that I've heard from coworkers that have been, and I think it's one of the major thing is as someone in startup, you're wearing different hats in the same position. Like for example, they don't have a lot of tester in a startup, so you have to be mindful of like all the development plus testing, like doing multiple roles at the same time.
Infra, dev, test, everything.
Back end, front end, full stack,
Yeah.
mobile.
Yeah.
I do feel just even when entering Microsoft, I feel people still value bringing in just additional experience, like a diverse perspective. I think there's value there for certain.
Awesome. The next question will flip that on its head. What do you like about working at Microsoft specifically?
Well,
I can go. Oh,
no, go ahead. You go.
Okay. Lots of things. It's one of the nice things about working at a big company, typically has some decent funding and secure funding, and so you're not necessarily worried about that. So it gives you kind of the bandwidth to do a lot of learning on the job. It also, like, usually you have these long-term product roadmaps, and you can get really into the strategy and how you're going to optimize your technology and make tech trade-offs and get into the planning and the actual like development of that without kind of worrying about stuff being cut for funding reasons. Also, a company like Microsoft really emphasizes cross-discipline product development. So as an engineer, we get to work really closely with experts like Lisa in product development, as well as people in our data analytics team, as well as designers. And so that's one thing I really like about Microsoft, is that they push that cross-discipline product development mindset. So it allows me to upskill in those areas where I'm a bit weaker, while also developing technically. There's more, but I'll let Wendy and Lisa add on.
Lisa, you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, actually, so there are a couple of things for certain. I think Greg touched on there's a bit of a financial stability kind of situation there for certain. There is, I think if you want to be part of a cutting edge technology, well, I guess their startups can offer that too. But if you want to be able to see sort of a big movement, be part of a movement across an industry-wide sort of level, you would be able to achieve that at Microsoft, and you wouldn't be able to do that at a startup that touches hundreds of users. Like I've at firsthand experienced that the limits are, well, there's far fewer limits at Microsoft, and we're able to make much larger sizable technology changes that would absolutely not be available at a smaller startup. There is just no way that there would be funding for that. There'd be no way that they'd be able to take that level of risk. And so that is, I feel like that's a great thing to have, to be able to work on it, be at this moment in like momentum shifts like that. And one thing that personally I feel is really great is the data is actually great, in that we have, for the first time, I'm able to work with data scientists, more than one, several, a whole team of them. And in a smaller company, you don't have access to those type of resources. I have to pull my own data. And actually, let me back that up. Okay, if you have data in a smaller company, wow, this company is already doing something right, any level of data. And then two is, so at my last company, I actually had to implement a behavior analytics platform. Then we got data. So, and then I had to self-serve. I had to build all the dashboards, I built all the charts, I had to pull my own data. And then I also had to encourage other people to use this data so we can make data-driven decisions. So at Microsoft, data is a given. All decisions are made based on data, and there is a whole team dedicated to ensuring that we're doing that day in, day out, and we are not just shipping something and then leaving it and not trying to go back and wonder, and not going back and understanding if it actually met the need that we sought out to meet. We are actually constantly doing that, whereas at a smaller company, oftentimes that gets forgotten because there are other things that we have to chase after, because you need to get funding, for example. So for me, I feel like that was really big, that I can actually go back and iterate on an experience and again and again. And yeah.
In terms of the things that I would that I enjoy working for Microsoft is the impact that you get to make through like everyday projects. You know, the things that we work on are what people uses every day, like Word, Office, M365, Windows, right? So these are very enterprise and also customer focused. So we get to ship out a lot of the features that people are excited for. Also, Microsoft has a really good diversity culture program. So we include a lot of like accessibility in mind. We think about all of the the diverse employees that we bring on board. Yeah, so the team is well mixed, and there's always even more diversity, goals that each team will try to hit.
Yeah, I say at Microsoft, you can set the standard in the industry for certain. Like the diversity element, I think, is a big one. Microsoft is very well known to be very diverse, and it's a big value here.
Yeah, I'm sure like hearing about these benefits, a lot of people in this chat are really interested in joining Microsoft. So if you guys were hiring interns for your team, what would you look for outside of hard skills?
One thing I like to look for is like a curiosity mindset. And so how sure, someone might be able to get something working, but do they fully understand why it's working, and likely not fully, and are they motivated to understand that? A lot of what we do for development and engineering might not be done or might not be available on Stack Overflow or online. And so it takes a certain mindset to bring that problem solving one step further and actually figure out the root issues or good solutions and varying solutions that with trade-offs. So definitely looking for like a curiosity to learn mindset on top of some technical skills.
Yeah, for me, it's all about like problem solving skill. I think because a lot of the language have commonality fundamentals that you could probably like carry from one to another. So I think it's the problem solving skill that really matters in basically going through the various languages that are available. Yeah. And also the ability to, join in a team environment, working with, not just software developers, but also like PM, product manager, design, just cross collaboration.
Yeah, I would say in products, we definitely look for being able to communicate clearly and concisely. It's sort of what we do every day, is to bring more clarity to whatever feature we're working on. So this doesn't only apply to product managers. I definitely value that if in times where I've been involved in the interviewing process for engineers, being able to communicate your ideas clearly to the product manager is also very important. And then so in addition to that, if you can show that you are someone who takes feedback and is collaborative, we all need to work in a collaborative nature, as I mentioned earlier, like designer, product manager, engineering is the trifecta. You are collaborating together every day, so you need to be able to show that those skills are something you can bring to the table.
I have a follow-up for you, Lisa.
Yeah.
What types of portfolio items or experiences would you like to see from a prospective employee to meet those skills and to demonstrate that?
I would say it's typically more of they would have to share experiences where they've exhibited that behavior. I think that's hard to actually see in a resume, for example. But for a product, I guess if you are able to communicate what sort of business value you drove for a specific thing that you delivered, that shows a good sign that you are understanding like what it means to sell, maybe not sell, but to communicate value. So I would say that one is definitely something that would pique my interest. And then the rest of it, I think it would have to be maybe an interview to understand like, or you like to be more collaborative, are you likely to the other thing. And I think taking initiative, I think sometimes for university students, like for people like for you, like if you are leading initiatives like this, I think that shows that you have the capacity to take initiative of things, and that's always valued no matter what job you take.
Thank you. And I'll extend this to Wendy and Greg too. What types of things do you like to see students build in terms of projects and portfolios to make them seem like great candidates for joining your company?
For me, I think it would be like having a project where you spend like end to end, maybe like something that you build from a service side, and then have something on the front end side. So it's a product that you're very passionate about, some unique idea that trigger that you want to prove out as a feature or an app, that sorts of things. And I think the less importance about is like the language, the programming language that's used, but more about how do you solve for deploying packages, the things that you learn along the way, right? Like the problem solving skill that you're gonna get from that.
Yeah, totally. Echoing Wendy, not necessarily too important necessarily, but the what or like frameworks or everything used. But some of that does indicate like some passion or drive or initiative, even as Lisa mentioned. But yeah, something that you can talk to on a technical basis to we can probe really deep, and ideally something that you're teaching me as you being, if we're talking about it in an interview or just a coffee chat, you being the creator of this and developer, what can you teach me about it? And that kind of shows how deep or how far you go with the project. Obviously, going from like full stack is always useful because you can get into more conversations about it.
I also think if you're able to show customer empathy, if you can put yourself in the shoes of the customer and show that you can think like the customer, how you're solving to meet customer needs, that one usually comes with experience. So that if you can show that up front, it goes a long way.
Totally. I have one quick follow-up for you all. I think we have some people who are here who are interested in the design aspect, or who might be interested in working in the design space. I know we don't have Henry here today to talk about that, but from your experience, do you have any advice for the types of work that people interested in the design space should be working on for their portfolios? And maybe Lisa might have a better answer on this. I think product managers probably have a closer relationship with design.
Yes, I would say, it depends on the role, but typically with design and EM and engineering manager, we should all be like, we should be best buds, basically. Design, from what I hear, I think being able to communicate, from what I hear with my designer friends who have gone through interviews, say at like Meta, you need to be able to explain clearly. I don't think it's necessarily what product or what project, but being able to explain your design decisions, why you made those decisions, why you think that was the right decisions, what options you explored in order to get to that decision. And I think those are it's more important to be able to communicate that versus in the portfolio that you build.
Thank you.
And focus on the user journey and the user experience. And in those conversations, like as you talk about the trade-offs, as Lisa mentioned, what trade-offs were they for the user? So having that empathetic approach from the user, because ultimately designers are designing products to be used by users, and that's what the most important thing is at the end of the day. So coming from your designs from that angle.
Yeah, I would also add like maybe also creativity and also communication skill, because a lot of the times designer have to communicate their like the ideas or a specific feature through like various details of logic that they have to consider. You know, a typical user would do it this way, but an exceptional user would do it some other way. So I think that's another good skill set to have.
I think one thing that would really set you apart, if you have gone out and actually validated that design in some way, you are a star performer already. Like not everybody has gone out and do that. If you can validate, that means you're bringing data in, you've done research, you understand the value of research, and not every designer out there understands it. Actually, sorry, let me take that back. I think most designers understand the value of research. Not every company can fund that research. So being able to demonstrate that goes a long way.
Yeah, I think there's also a difference maybe in the UI designer versus more of like experienced designer. So in the UI side, I think they have to work on a lot of like the Figma, like mocking up what it would look like so that the engineering partners would have something that they would, you know, go off of. So, but for more of like the user experience designer, I think they're more about, yeah, the researching and then validating that data.
it's so interesting seeing how you guys are answering these questions. 'Cause, like some of these things, like I would have never thought about. So I guess next question is, where do you guys hope to go in the future with your own careers?
Okay, I could go next.
Yeah, Wendy. Go Wendy.
I think for me, I am just going as as the day-to-day plans out. Engineering manager is still a new I guess skill set that I want to improve upon. And also I think the career path for software developer, especially engineering managers in Microsoft, is a quite long way. Like there is various levels of seniority that you could have as well. And there's also like once you get into very senior engineering, like I think it's general engineering manager, then you get even bigger responsibility, more projects, and working with partner teams that have quite a bit of headcounts underneath. So I think one of the interesting road path to take forward is that. And there's also engineers that are very specific to individual contribution. So they won't be going into managing roles, but they'll stick to very specific technical areas that they own, right? So it's about, I guess, the mixture of the two. If you enjoy the managing role or you enjoy diving into and owning a very specific technical area. And I think for me, I have not yet thought which one is the absolute path that I want to take. So I'm exploring the management role right now, and then to see if I would want to continue that on, or eventually switch back. That's fine.
Yeah, I can go then. So right now I don't manage anybody. And another part of product management that's super fun is you don't get to manage everyone, but you just somehow convince them all to do what you want to do. In a gist. Right now, so I would say that I started in a startup, and then it was sort of by design, but not really. But I did want to sort of experience different levels of companies. So I started in a startup, then went to like a mid-sized company, and now at Microsoft. And I feel at each of these levels of company, I've learned a lot, and that kind of makes my perspective a little more diverse. And I feel like I have really a toolkit from this learning now. And I also want to, so I think my next step would be going towards what Wendy's saying, exploring the management path. So there is also in product management, you can take an individual contributor route, or you can take a management route. And also in design, that's also possible. And so I probably want to explore the management route, see if that's something I enjoy, or whether I want to stay as an individual contributor. And yeah, and I will probably look for opportunities to explore that, whether that's through mentorship or through just helping other more junior colleagues on my team to do that. And for the further future, I don't really know what's next after Microsoft, for example, or how long I want to stay there. And that's totally fine. Not knowing what you want to do is totally fine.
Awesome. Yeah, I think one common thing between Wendy and Lisa was like trying out IC versus manager and getting different experiences with that to see what you like. And I think that's a really good kind of life lesson for your career, especially when you're young and in university. If you're looking for an engineering role, try different areas of engineering, try front end, back end, try being infrastructure engineer. Just get exposure to them to kind of see what you like. And that's definitely helped me in my career and figure out where I want to focus. And after being an EM engineering manager for a while, I realized that's definitely where I want to continue to pursue. And so there's definitely an engineering manager track at Microsoft. It probably mirrors some of the other big tech companies. And so like always keeping an open mind, whether to stay at a big company or go to a smaller company and potentially have a bigger role there. But I kind of know I want to stay on this route, so I'm going to continue to pursue the engineering manager route at Microsoft for now.
That's interesting. So I guess kind of following up to those answers, what's like the most exciting part about the future with Microsoft? Like,
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft is pretty crazy because Microsoft is a very old company. If we're looking at the tech industry, not necessarily if you're looking at Fortune 500 per se, but if you're looking at tech industry, Microsoft's old, and Microsoft's managed to stay relevant, especially in more recent years, with a lot of tech advancements and interesting technology. And I'm sure a lot of people are aware of some recent investments in the AI field that Microsoft's making. And so being able to work for an old company that manages to stay relevant is really exciting. So getting to work in kind of cutting edge technology spaces while at Microsoft is definitely up there at the top for me.
And one of the things that a lot of the team focus on in Microsoft is that we try to improve productivity for users that uses our product, whether it's like through work that they use Windows or Office. So a lot of these products have definitely features that are needing improvements, and then definitely new ways of doing things, hoping to include some of the open AI collaboration as well.
Yeah, everything that Greg and Wendy said. So being able to ride the tech wave, being able to be on the edge of being part of that momentum, as I mentioned, are all exciting things. I think the other part of Microsoft is it's rare. It's not often that you get to work on a product and you tell other people and they all know what product you're working on. So there is some like recognition there, and it just makes you feel like, oh, like the impact I'm making feels closer. Sometimes you're working on a product and you never get to meet their users, and we get to work on products where probably some of you, if not all of you, are users. And so I think that's very exciting, being able to know that.
Thank you. So I have one final question here before we start doing audience questions. So our audience members, if you have something you're curious about, think of it now. You can put it in the chat, and either Noel or I might ask it to our panelists. But the final question here I have for you all is, what mistakes did you make in your career, or things that you wish you knew that you didn't? And what advice would you turn that into our audience here today?
I just spoke about one that I think, especially and maybe not especially, but no matter what role you'd be in, don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't feel like you are asking any stupid questions. Oftentimes when you're asking the question, there are several people in the room who have the same question in their mind, so you're helping them out. And it's important for you and for your team members that you get clarity if that's what you need. And so being able to speak that out, ask questions is really important. I think earlier in my career, I would feel like, oh, I'm not sure this is the right forum to ask this question. There's also ways that too. Maybe sometimes it might not be the right forum, but you can ask your manager later, perhaps. But yeah, just I wouldn't be too afraid of that. Everybody wants you to succeed because they want the product to succeed. And so I've definitely, in my earlier days, have kept questions to myself, which I found later down the road, there would have been no consequences whatsoever, only benefits had I spoken them sooner.
I could add that I think one mistake that I would have made in my early career is not being proactive at certain areas. One thing was like at the beginning of my career, I didn't think, communication skill was one important things to be proactive learning and improving upon. But I think that is, always a skill set that is valuable in, team collaboration and basically everyday work. Yeah, to be proactive, be, willing to learn, just be able to, jump in or when if you're not familiar with the area, that's fine at all, right? Like there are definitely things not everyone know, but I think it's about the ability to jump on it or learn new things as you go.
Yeah, and I can share one. It's kind of similar to the kind of asking questions, but like engineering is actually very collaborative profession and job. So early on in career, I thought it was much more like individual, and I wouldn't take the opportunity to run my architecture or technical designs by other engineers on the team, and then realizing that, oh, I've kind of gone too far with my development before someone else noticed some holes in it. So really being proactive early on sharing and getting input from fellow engineers and being much more collaborative upfront will actually make a much better or increase your chances of success a lot more than kind of going down a path by yourself.
Yeah, I also want to add that I mentioned take initiative. I think that goes, if you've noticed an issue at work, maybe it's a process that's broken or something, and obviously if you still manage to complete your regular job, but find a capacity to take it upon yourself to improve something, that value is not unseen. Like that value contributes a lot to the rest of the team, and it shows initiative, and people will remember that. Yeah. There was one more thing I wanted to say, but now I've lost it.
I totally agree with that advice, that initiative thing. If you've never like worked in a leadership role anywhere or done your own thing before, it's hard to really realize it, but it is such a big task to be in a leadership position and try and like handle everything that everyone does and have to be on top of all that. So when people go out there and they're proactive and they're getting stuff done without being told, and they're making a positive business impact, whether that's in a real business or in a club or another organization, I think that makes such a huge difference. So we can now move on to our audience questions. Noel, I'll give you the opportunity to ask the first one.
Sure, thanks. This one comes from Mr. Dendar. How has UX and product design become a bigger part of the industry or workflow in recent years?
Could you repeat the question once more?
Yeah, sure thing. So how has UX or product design how has it contributed to the industry or workflow in recent years? Like how has it become a bigger part of product development or yeah.
Maybe I could take a stab at it. So like from the 10 years that I've been working on software engineer, I think product in terms of like user features has been more planned out in the recent year than like for instance when I started. I think Microsoft even has more processes of, first we have a tech like a feature spec where the PM, the product manager plus the design would sort of outline what the feature is, and then it goes into sort of like estimation plus cost on like the engineering side. So there's more process involved when creating a feature or product to be shipped out in the real world. Whereas in the previous early days of my career, a lot of that is very fresh. It's like we get a prototype and then we make that prototype into a shipping product. I think there's more process in the current industry for feature designs and product.
Thank you. Next question here is from Waika. The question is, could you give a rapid fire description of the life cycle of a product or a feature within Microsoft?
I mean, I can do it for products in general. I don't know if I've,
Really, that's it. That's good enough for us, I think.
yeah, because I don't think I've got the whole experience for Microsoft to know. But I don't think it's any different. So generally speaking, there's some idea that is formed, whether it is born from engineers, or it came from top down. Either way, there was some idea that was born, and it's some feature. Product managers will then go and validate that this feature is feasible with engineering, that it meets customer needs with users, and then it would then meet business need. Obviously, if it came top down, it already meets business needs, so your job's done there. But if it's the other way around, you might need to make sure that it meets business needs. And then you would then roll out, I would say, then you design the feature, obviously. This is ideal, okay? Not everything happens in all these steps, but ideally, and then you go and design the feature with engineering input so that you're not designing some blue sky solution that will never be able to be built. And then you then go and validate that solution with customers by building a prototype. Or it doesn't have to be a coded prototype. It could be just some wireframes, something like usertesting.com, totally works. Depends on what the need is, depending on what the research question is. And then you validate it, then you build your MVP. And throughout this process, of course, you need to ensure that your stakeholders are bought in. And then you roll out. And then ideally you have telemetry in place or data in place, so then you can actually quantitatively measure whether this product met people's needs. And then you iterate on that. And then eventually, if this product does not meet business needs or user needs, you sunset that product, you deprecate it. I would say that's very rapid fire already. And I would say not all of these steps are always constantly followed depending on the situation, but that is the ideal situation, that all of these steps are followed.
Or you improve upon it, not sunset it.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Ideally, you can evolve the product so that it continues to meet user needs.
Okay, here's a multi-part question from Kevin. How do you guys handle new technical proposals, and when as we all know, technology moves really fast. So as new frameworks and new technologies prop up, do you guys feel the pressure to incorporate that in your tech stack? And are you guys constantly learning about these new technologies, even if it's not part of your current tech stack?
Sure, I can take a step. Yes, sort of. Sometimes it's kind of a summary answer to that. But handling tech proposals. So great thing about Microsoft is huge company, but it's actually split up into a bunch of smaller teams. And each of these smaller teams is kind of run as an individual business unit. And within that business unit, pretty much anyone can propose ideas or product ideas or technology stack ideas, as long as they kind of bring forward a business case or a use case of it and why it makes sense. And that very well might be something that we totally adopt. And it's kind of called entrepreneurship inside a company. And that's definitely promoted to do at Microsoft. And so if we get a new tech proposal, we definitely kind of weigh it against everything that we're currently doing. And there's a big vet cycle on all new proposals. And it might be tempting to jump into the kind of latest, hottest tech, but at the same time, we're building something for users, and that might not be the best thing for users. And that might not be the best thing for our talent on the team. And so there's a bunch of different things we take into consideration on adopting new technology. But often there's a big learning cycle with adopting new technology, which in itself needs to be built into the plan to release a product or part of the product development plan. So we look at new technologies often all the time, but usually we're going to stick to certain technologies that make sense and then adopt new ones that also make sense when we're weighing all the variables against each other.
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
can also say like we don't like adopt new technology if there's no business cases to support it, right? Like it's the same as like refactoring. If you keep refactoring your code, you know, the work never goes, you know, away, right? So it's there must be a purpose. Maybe like your feature has to be able to handle a larger load, more performance, and that's, you know, a need that we need to look into the newer technology, because that will be one of the benefits of adapting that specific technology, right?
Makes a lot of sense. We're almost near the end of the general Q&A session. But I think, yeah, Lisa, you just had your text response to that question. That's what I was going to ask. Project versus product management. Do you want to elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, so the main difference between a project and a project has a defined start and end time. So imagine building a new building, okay? Like you need to make a building go up and build it. There is a very defined start and end to that project. A product is an ongoing thing because it needs to, the reason for this product's existence is that it is there to meet a set of users' needs. So the product should be continuously evolving to continue to meet these users' needs. And so it does not have a defined end time. It can continue to evolve, and we never know when the end of the life cycle is when we're building it. So that would be the main difference.
All right, thank you. Looks like there's a question about internships, if there's any open positions, as well as if you have any insights on if there's going to be like a pause in the hiring freeze and hiring more people soon.
Fortunately, those decisions are well above our pay grade. Those decisions are at the high business unit levels, where we have like CVPs, corporate vice presidents, and executive vice presidents running these large organizations inside the company who make those decisions. So not unfortunately privy to that information.
I think in terms of co-op and internship, because the government also have, you know, I guess benefits that companies would take on. So I don't think that is affected too much, but I will have to check with our, you know, intern recruiters.
All right, and then there's another question here about program managers versus engineering managers, and if there's a difference between them.
Well, I can say for a fact that I probably cannot become an engineering manager because I don't have that technology background to understand what my team would be working on, which I think would be needed oftentimes. So like Wendy and Greg, I'd pull into meeting because they're the ones to help me understand at a high level whether it's what the general effort is. So you need to have that level of expertise to have that role.
I would say engineering manager are just, you know, managers who manages software engineers.
Yes, whereas program managers are not managers who manage other program managers. You'd have to be there'd be another title for that.
Yeah.
This one's specifically for Gregory. Do you think that having a double degree gave you any edge when applying during your career, and more specifically applying for Microsoft?
Good question. During the application process, perhaps maybe some soft skill development, maybe a bit of an edge there, but definitely in the role, I would see more of a benefit from having both the business computer science background, and especially transitioning to an EM. And as an EM, you do take on you have to be a bit more product oriented, in which case the business background helps a bit too. So not not too much during the application process, but definitely in the role and kind of career progression.
All right, and with that, we have reached the end of our general Q&A. Thank you everyone for coming. We appreciate your time, and we'd like you to fill out a feedback form for attendees so we can make sure that you enjoyed this event and that we can improve for future events. So I just put it in the chat. Make sure to give it a look. If you're interested in joining TechStart UCalgary, you can scan this QR code. You can also go to techstartucalgary.com, and there's more social media information there. Give us a follow, and you won't miss out on any new future opportunities that come up. Yeah, thanks again, and we will get started with the breakout rooms right away here.
Awesome.